to call it the major storehouse of artistic creativity probably lies in the region of the right inferior parietal lobe or lobule, below the interparietal sulcus. We'll see that. Now, closely associated with the artistic creativity is the science of vision. I am not going into the details of the science of vision, but just like to highlight the existence of two visual systems in the human brain. One is called the ventral or the what system, the other is called the dorsal or where system. The concept was first brought in by Ungar-Keder and Michigan in 1982 and further elaborated by Goodell and Westwood, whose papers are quoted in everything about visual science. So we have got the ventral or what system and the dorsal or where system. What is it? Now this cartoon from Nancy Andreassen's book actually illustrates that. If you see a red sports car, the image is formed in the occipital cortex or the visual cortex. Now then that image is transferred to the anterior temporal cortex through the ventral stream. That is the what system. And you identify that, okay, this is a red sports car. But where is the car? In the garage on the street of Calcutta or climbing up the hill onto the mountain? For that, the image has to go through the dorsal stream to the parietal lobe. And you can identify that the car is climbing up the road. So that is the where system, which is the dorsal, and what system, which goes to the temporal cortex, is the ventral system. So these are the two very important visual systems that exist in human brain, and we have got disorders of that. We'll come to that. Now I have, in a relatively recently made hypothesis, which should be published sometime this year, liken these two systems, the dorsal system and the ventral system, with the two major white fiber tracts in the brain. We have got the superior longitudinal fibers, fasciculus, as you can see. This is from Gray's Anatomy, which connects the occipital lobe to the parietal lobe and then goes right up to the frontal lobe. And that I consider to be the dorsal system. Whereas the other, the inferior longitudinal fasciculus, which starts from the occipital lobe and comes through the temporal lobe to the anterior temporal lobar structures, like the hippocampus in particular, that is likely to be the what system. So that is the ventral or what system, the inferior longitudinal fibers, and that is the superior longitudinal fasciculus, or that is the where system or the dorsal system. Based on this concept, that we have got these two visual systems and they corroborate with the superior longitudinal fasciculus and the inferior longitudinal fasciculus, I have tried to hypothesize the possible neural psychiatry involved when an artist wants to paint. What is the first thing that an artist does? He conceptualizes an idea that I am going to paint a distressed lady, or I am going to paint a murder, or something like that, whether good, bad, anything. So the first thing is that the ideation, that is done in the ventromedial prefrontal. That is the site of creative cognition. First class. Thank you. That is the site of creative cognition. This area gets rich supplies from the amygdala nucleus through the limbic system. If you remember your anatomy, you get the stria terminalis and the fimbria, and that goes to the mammillary bodies, the mammillothalamic tract, and then from the anterior nucleus of the thalamus to the ventromedial nucleus of the prefrontal lobe. So the limbic system relays over there. We also get it from the memory circuit, that is the hippocampus, that is the fimbria, and the uncinate fasciculus. I didn't show you that. Let's go back to the previous slide. There is one fasciculus here, which connects the anterior temporal lobe to the medial and inferior frontal lobe. That is the uncinate fasciculus. So through which the hippocampus is connected to it. And when we get the memory there in the hippocampus through the uncinate fasciculus, both of them reach the ventromedial prefrontal lobe. Because when you paint a distressed lady or you paint a murder scene, you paint it out of emotion or you paint it out of memory. If you have never heard anything called murder, if you have never heard anything called a distressed lady or seen a distressed lady either in life or in a picture, you can never paint it. It's not pure imagination. It's experience and it's emotion. Now, once the ideation is formed in the ventromedial prefrontal lobe, the information is transferred to the dorsolateral prefrontal lobe because it's all in the same lobe. From the dorsolateral prefrontal lobe, through the dorsal stream, that is the superior longitudinal fasciculus, it goes to the occipital lobe of the visual cortex. It should go. I don't know whether it goes. This is my hypothesis. But on its passage, the superior longitudinal fiber fasciculus also passes through the inferior parietal lobule, which is the center for artistic creativity. So that probably gives artistic coloring to this image which is being formed in the occipital lobe. You understand? Ideation done here, transferred to dorsolateral, transferred to occipital lobe, creativity, artistic creativity output is there, and then the visual image is formed in the brain. Once the image is formed, it is transferred back to the dorsolateral prefrontal lobe. That goes to the motor cortex, that moves the hand and the brush and the pen, and the artist paints the painting. Once the art is being created, it is continuously visualized by the occipital cortex. Information sent there, matched with memory and emotion through this also the inferior longitudinal fasciculus, and further modifications in the art form can be made. So that is a rather complicated hypothetical circuit, but that is probably how the system works. But what happens to your brain when you visit an art gallery and watch a beautiful piece of art and see how beautiful it is? Okay? You probably got a circuit for that. You see the art, whatever it is, Yogen Chaudhary or Sanatan Dinda, whoever it is, and it goes to the visual pathway to the occipital lobe, because that's visual pathway. From the occipital lobe to the dorsal stream, the superior longitudinal fasciculus, it goes to the frontal lobe, the dorsolateral portion. Then it goes to the ventrolateral, goes to the anterior temporal lobar structure through the uncinate fasciculus. From the occipital fasciculus lobe also through the inferior longitudinal fasciculus, it can go to the anterior temporal lobe. Anterior temporal lobe contains the amygdala, which is the source of the limbic system. It evokes emotion. And if the emotion is a positive one, you say ah. And if the emotion is a negative one, you don't like the painting or the sculpture, you give a sardonic smile. Okay? So it's very simple, neuroanatomy. Absolutely neuroanatomy, on which I think the whole thing is based. It is very difficult to prove because in